The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, cutting through the silence of Kevin's small Chicago apartment. He froze, wrist deep in dishwater, staring at the screen. An unknown number. His heart thudded, not from hope but from dread. A week ago, Emily, his wife of 5 years, had walked out, claiming she needed to find herself. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway, a ghost he couldn't scrub away. Now, this call felt like the first crack in a dam he wasn't ready to see burst. He dried his hands, the dish towel shaking slightly, and answered. "Hello." His voice was steady, but his pulse wasn't. "Check your email," a low voice said, calm but deliberate. "You deserve the truth." The line went dead. Kevin's stomach twisted. He opened his laptop, fingers hesitating over the keys. His Gmail spam folder blinked with one new message. No subject, just a string of numbers as the sender. Attached was a single photo. Emily, laughing at a patio bar, a man's hand resting on her shoulder. The timestamp was 11 days before their divorce was finalized. 11 days before she'd zipped up her bag, looked him in the eye, and said, "This is growth, Kevin. For both of us." He stared at the photo, the edges of his vision blurring. The man's face was half-shadowed, but his smile was sharp, practiced. Kevin's grip tightened on the laptop. He'd spent the last week eating cereal from a measuring cup, replaying Emily's old voicemails, her voice mispronouncing Wednesday in that quirky way he used to love. He'd thought she was chasing independence, some abstract need to unbecome a wife. But this wasn't independence. This was betrayal. His phone buzzed again, a text from the same unknown number. "She's not who you think. Ask about True Self Collective." Kevin's jaw clenched. He didn't know what True Self was, but the name alone felt like a lead. He grabbed his keys and headed to his car, the Chicago evening air biting at his knuckles. Emily's new place was in Evanston, a 20-minute drive. He needed answers, not riddles. The drive was a blur of streetlights and honking horns. When he pulled up to her apartment complex, the windows were dark. He knocked, then pounded. Nothing. A neighbor, an older man with a skeptical squint, cracked his door open. "You looking for the blonde? She moved out 2 days ago. Left with a couple of suitcases. No word on where." Kevin's throat tightened. Did she say anything? Leave anything behind? The neighbor shrugged. "Just some junk mail in the box downstairs." Kevin found the mailbox, half expecting it to be empty. Instead, a single envelope sat inside, his name scrawled in Emily's familiar handwriting. He tore it open. Inside was a folded letter, her words precise but heavy. "I wasn't myself, Kevin. True Self Collective showed me who I could be. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything. I thought I was saving us both." He leaned against the mailbox, the cold metal grounding him. True Self Collective. The name burned into his mind. Back in his car, he pulled out his phone and searched. The website was sleek, promising self-discovery through community, with photos of smiling women in yoga poses and candlelit circles. But the testimonials felt too perfect, like scripted ads. A deeper search led to a forum thread buried in an old Reddit archive. An anonymous user wrote, "True Self isn't a seminar. It's a trap. They convince you your life is a cage, then sell you a key that doesn't work." Kevin's hands shook as he scrolled. Another post mentioned a facilitator named David, described as charismatic but manipulative, known for targeting women in vulnerable moments. One user claimed their sister joined True Self and left her family within a month, talking like a stranger. Kevin's mind raced. Was this what happened to Emily? Had she been pulled into some kind of psychological scheme? He drove home, the letter crumpled in his pocket. His apartment felt smaller now, the silence louder. He opened his laptop again, digging deeper. An old news article mentioned David Ellis, a former therapist who lost his license after unethical practices with clients. No criminal charges, but the pattern was clear. Women joined his retreats, then cut ties with their past lives. Kevin's chest tightened. Emily hadn't just left him, she'd been guided too. His phone lit up again. Another email, this time from a different anonymous account. No text, just a link to a private cloud folder. He hesitated, then clicked. Inside were 3 photos. The first showed Emily at a retreat, sitting cross-legged, her eyes fixed on a man at the front of the room. David, presumably. The second was her laughing with the same man from the bar photo, his hand now on her lower back. The third was the worst. Emily and David on a beach, her head on his shoulder, a date stamp from 3 months ago. They'd been together, while Kevin was still cooking her dinner, still asking if she was okay, still believing they were a team. He slammed the laptop shut, his breath ragged. The pieces were falling into place, but they didn't make sense. Why the anonymous messages? Who was sending them? And why now? He opened the letter again, rereading her words. I thought I was saving us both. Saving them from what? A marriage she'd already checked out of? His phone buzzed once more. A text from Emily. Can we talk? I'm in Chicago. I'm messed up, Kevin. His heart stopped. She was back. After a week of silence, after moving out, after him, she was reaching out. He typed a reply, then deleted it. He needed to see her, but not like this, not blindsided. He needed a plan. Kevin drove to his school, where he coached the science club. The familiar hum of the lab calmed him. He sat at his desk, the letter and photos spread out like evidence in a crime scene. He wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. He was a man with questions, and someone out there was feeding him answers. True Self Collective was the key, and David was at the center. Kevin didn't know what he'd do when he found Emily, but one thing was certain. He wasn't letting her vanish again without the truth. Kevin's fingers hovered over his phone, Emily's text glowing on the screen. Can we talk? I'm in Chicago. I'm messed up, Kevin. His thumb twitched, itching to respond, but he stopped himself. The photos of her with David, the cryptic emails, the Reddit threads about True Self Collective, they swirled in his head like a storm he couldn't outrun. He wasn't ready to face her, not until he had more than just pain and questions. He needed proof, something solid to confront whatever she'd become. He was still at his desk in the school science lab, the hum of fluorescent lights steadying his nerves. The photos and Emily's letter lay scattered across the table, each one a piece of a puzzle he didn't want to solve but couldn't ignore. True Self Collective was no self-help group. It was a machine, and David was its engine. Kevin opened his laptop and dug deeper, scouring social media for any trace of the group's events. A pinned post on their Instagram announced a transformation weekend in a community center just outside Chicago, happening tomorrow. Open to the public, no registration required. His pulse quickened. This was his chance. The next morning, Kevin drove to the community center, a squat brick building tucked in a quiet suburb. He parked a block away, his heart pounding as he slipped a small voice recorder into his pocket. He wasn't sure what he'd find, but he wasn't walking in blind. At the entrance, a woman with a clipboard smiled too brightly, handing him a name tag. First time? You'll love it, she said, her voice syrupy. Kevin nodded, writing Mike on the tag. No one needed to know who he was, not yet. Inside, the room buzzed with chatter. About 50 people, mostly women, sat in folding chairs arranged in a circle. At the front stood a man, tall, mid-40s, with a polished confidence that filled the space. David. Kevin recognized him from the photos, though his presence in person was sharper, like a blade hidden in a handshake. David's voice carried as he spoke about breaking free from the cages of routine. The crowd nodded, some scribbling notes, others leaning forward like they were drinking his words. Kevin scanned the room for Emily, but didn't see her. His stomach churned. Was she even here? Halfway through David's talk, Kevin's phone vibrated. A new email from the anonymous sender. Look to your left. Third row. He glanced over. There she was, Emily, sitting stiffly, her hands clasped tight in her lap. She wasn't smiling or nodding like the others. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, distant, like she was trapped in her own head. Kevin's chest tightened. He wanted to march over, pull her out, demand answers. But he stayed put, the recorder in his pocket humming softly. David's speech grew louder, more intense. Your relationships, your roles, they're chains if they hold you back from your true self, he said, pacing. Sometimes freedom means walking away. A few women murmured in agreement. Kevin's jaw clenched. Was this the poison Emily had swallowed? He raised his hand, heart racing. David's eyes locked onto him, a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. Yes, Mike, David said, reading the name tag. Kevin stood, forcing his voice to stay even. What if walking away hurts someone? Is that still freedom? The room went quiet. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes meeting his for the first time. She froze, her face a mix of shock and something else. Guilt, maybe. David didn't flinch. Pain is part of growth, he said smoothly. Sometimes you have to let go of what's comfortable to become who you're meant to be. The crowd clapped, but Kevin saw Emily's hands tremble. She stood abruptly and slipped out a side door. Kevin followed, ignoring the stairs. Outside, in a narrow hallway, Emily leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Kevin, what are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp but shaky. "I could ask you the same thing," he said, stepping closer. "You left me, Emily. Then I get photos, emails, proof you were with him while we were still married. And now you're texting me like nothing happened?" Her eyes widened. "Photos? What photos?" "Don't play dumb," Kevin snapped, pulling out his phone. He showed her the beach photo. Her and David, too close, too happy. She stared, her face paling. "I didn't know anyone took that," she whispered. "Kevin, it wasn't what you think. David, he made me feel like I was someone else. Someone better." "Better than what? Us?" Kevin's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. "What is this place, Emily? What did he do to you?" She shook her head, tears welling. "It's not just him. True self. They get in your head. They tell you your life is a lie, that you're trapped. I thought leaving you would make me free, but just made me lost." Before Kevin could respond, David appeared in the hallway, his smile gone. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone clipped. Kevin turned, his recorder still running. "Just catching up with my wife," he said, emphasizing a word. David's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. "Emily, you're missing the session," David said, his voice smooth again. "Let's talk later." She hesitated, then nodded and walked back inside. Kevin stayed, staring David down. "What's your game?" he asked quietly. "You break up marriages for fun, or is there a paycheck in it?" David laughed, low and cold. "You don't get it, do you? I don't force anyone. They choose to leave. Emily chose it. Maybe ask yourself why." Kevin's fist clenched, but he didn't swing. Instead, he leaned in, voice low. "I'm going to find out what you're doing here, and I'm going to stop it." David's smile returned, sharper now. "Good luck, Mike. You'll need it." Back in his car, Kevin played the recording, David's words clear and damning. It wasn't enough to take him down, but it was a start. His phone buzzed again, another anonymous email. This one had a single line. "Check the retreat's financials. Follow the money." Attached was a PDF, a leaked bank statement showing large transfers to an offshore account labeled True Self Donations. Kevin's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a scam, it was organized. He drove home, the recorder and PDF burning a hole in his pocket. Emily's words echoed. "It just made me lost." She wasn't the enemy, not entirely. But David was, and Kevin was done playing the victim. He'd go back to that retreat, not as Mike, but as himself. And this time, he wouldn't just ask questions, he'd bring answers. Kevin gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white as he sped back toward Chicago. The voice recorder in his pocket felt like a live wire. David's smug words captured in crisp audio. "They choose to leave. Maybe ask yourself why." The leaked bank statement from the anonymous email burned in his mind. Large sums funneled to an offshore account under True Self Donations. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. True Self Collective was a machine, and Kevin was determined to dismantle it. His phone buzzed as he pulled into his apartment complex. Another text from Emily. "I'm sorry. Meet me at the Lakefront Cafe, 7 p.m. I'll explain everything." His first instinct was to ignore it, to keep digging into True Self's finances, but her words from the retreat hallway. "It just made me lost." Gnawed at him. She wasn't the Emily he'd married, but she wasn't gone entirely. He typed a quick reply. "I'll be there." He needed her side, not just to understand her, but to understand how deep David's influence ran. At the cafe, Kevin arrived early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the door. The Lake Michigan breeze carried the hum of evening joggers and cyclists outside. He kept the recorder in his pocket, ready if needed. At 7:03, Emily walked in, her steps hesitant. She slid into the chair across from him, hands fidgeting. No apologies, no small talk. She leaned forward, voice low. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "True Self isn't what it seems. David doesn't just run seminars. He targets people like me, people who feel stuck. He makes you think you're breaking free, but you're just trading one cage for another." Kevin's jaw tightened. "So you left me for his lies? For him?" He pulled out his phone, showing her the beach photo. Her and David, too close, 3 months ago. Her eyes widened, then dropped to the table. "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice cracking. "He listened, Kevin. He made me feel like I was more than a wife, more than your shadow. But it wasn't real. It was scripted. He'd say the same things to others, word for word." She slid a folded paper across the table. I wrote this for you before I left. I never sent it. Kevin unfolded it. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. You were my home, Kevin. But I believed I needed to be someone else to matter. I was wrong. He looked up, his throat tight. Why didn't you tell me? Why run to him? I thought I was saving myself, she said. David's retreats, they're not just talks. They use group exercises, late-night sessions, things that make you question everything. I started doubting us, doubting you. By the time I realized it was manipulation, I'd already left. Kevin leaned back, processing. So what now? You're back, and I'm supposed to forget the photos, the lies? No, she said quickly. I don't expect forgiveness, but I can help you stop him. I kept records, emails, schedules, names of other women he's targeted. He's not just a con man, Kevin. He's dangerous. He studied her, searching for the woman he'd loved, the one who'd laughed at his bad science puns. She was still there, buried under guilt and confusion. Show me, he said finally. They drove to a storage unit she'd rented in Evanston. Inside, a single box held a notebook and a USB drive. The notebook listed dates, locations, and cryptic notes. Session 3. Vulnerability exercise. Push for family detachment. The USB had screenshots of emails between David and other participants, promising personalized transformation for steep fees. One email mentioned a private consultation with Emily, dated a week before she left him. Kevin's stomach churned. This was no fling, it was calculated. Give me the USB, he said. I'm taking this to the police. Emily hesitated. If you do, they'll know I was involved. I could lose everything. You already did, Kevin said, sharper than he meant. She flinched, but handed him the drive. I'm not doing this for you, Emily. I'm doing it for the others he's hurting. Back home, Kevin uploaded the files to his laptop. The emails were damning. David promising liberation while funneling money through shell accounts. But one file stopped him cold. A group chat log from True Self's inner circle. Emily's name appeared repeatedly, not as a victim, but as a recruiter. She'd referred 2 women to the program, praising David's vision. Kevin's hands shook. Had she been manipulated, or was she complicit? His phone buzzed. An anonymous email again. You're close, but you're missing the bigger picture. Meet me tomorrow, 9 p.m., Lincoln Park by the South Pond. Come alone. Kevin's pulse raced. Was this the same person sending the photos? A disgruntled ex-member? Or a trap? He didn't trust Emily fully, and he sure as hell didn't trust David. But the sender knew too much to ignore. The next evening, Kevin parked near Lincoln Park, the recorder in his pocket and the USB backed up on a cloud drive. The South Pond was quiet, the city's glow reflecting off the water. A figure waited on a bench, a woman, mid-30s, her posture tense. She stood as he approached. You're Kevin, she said, not a question. I'm Rachel. I used to run True Self's admin. I sent you the emails. Why? Kevin asked, keeping his distance. What's in it for you? David ruined my life, she said, her voice steady but laced with anger. He doesn't just scam people. He breaks them. I got out, but not before he used me to recruit others like Emily. She's not innocent, but she's not the villain either. Rachel handed him a flash drive. This has everything, bank records, client lists, even David's real name. He's been running this game for years, different cities, different names. The police won't move without hard evidence. This is it. Kevin took the drive, his mind racing. Why not go to the cops yourself? They won't listen to me, she said. I'm on those records too, but you're clean. You can end this. As Kevin drove home, the weight of the drives, Emily's and Rachel's, felt heavier than the betrayal itself. He had enough to bury David, but Emily's role as a recruiter changed everything. Tomorrow, he'd take the evidence to the police. But tonight, he needed to decide. Was Emily a victim worth saving, or an accomplice he'd have to let go? Kevin sat at his kitchen table, the 2 flash drives, Emily's and Rachel's, staring back at him like loaded dice. The weight of Emily's betrayal as a recruiter for True Self Collective pressed against his chest, but Rachel's words echoed louder. She's not innocent, but she's not the villain either. He hadn't slept, his mind torn between turning the evidence over to the police and confronting Emily one last time. The clock read 6:47 a.m. He had to move fast. He copied both drives to his laptop, then uploaded the files to a secure cloud server. Rachel's drive was a goldmine. Bank records showing True Self's donations funneled to a Cayman Islands account, client lists with dozens of names, in an email thread where David, real name Daniel Voss, bragged about rewiring participants to fund his lifestyle. Emily's drive was messier. Screenshots of her chats with David, her notes on recruitment tactics, and a draft email to Kevin she never sent, admitting she'd been pulled into something bigger than myself. Kevin's stomach churned. She'd helped David, but her words felt like a plea, not a confession. His phone buzzed. Emily again. I'm at your school. I need to see you. Please. Kevin froze. The school was his sanctuary, where he coached the science club and built trust with his students. Her showing up there felt like an invasion. But he grabbed his keys and the recorder, still in his pocket from the retreat. If she wanted to talk, he'd hear her out, but he wasn't letting her off easy. At the school, Kevin found Emily waiting by the science lab, pacing near the trophy case. She stopped when she saw him, her hands twisting together. I didn't know where else to go, she said, her voice low. David called me last night. He knows you were at the retreat. He's angry, Kevin. Good, Kevin said, his tone sharp. Let it be angry. I've got enough to bury him. Bank records, emails, your notes. You recruited for him, Emily. You brought other women into this mess. Her eyes widened, then dropped to the floor. I didn't know what I was doing at first. He made it sound like I was helping them, like I was giving them freedom. By the time I realized it was a scam, I was in too deep. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and handed it to him. This is everything I didn't put on the USB: dates, payments, things David told me to keep quiet about. I'm giving it to you because I want out. Kevin flipped through the notebook. It detailed incentive bonuses for recruiting new members, with Emily's name tied to 3 women who joined True Self. One entry stood out, a payment of $5,000 labeled loyalty bonus, dated a week before she left him. You took money for this, he said, holding up the page. While we were still married. I didn't spend it, she said quickly. It's in a separate account. I thought I was building something for us, for my future. I was wrong, Kevin. I'm trying to fix it. He wanted to believe her, but the sting of her actions held him back. Why should I trust you now? You lied for months. Because I'm here, she said, her voice breaking. I could have run, but I didn't. I'm telling you everything, even if it ruins me. Before Kevin could respond, his phone vibrated, an email from Rachel. Voss is moving. He's closing True Self's Chicago operations tonight. Meet me at the community center, 8 p.m. Bring what you have. Kevin's pulse raced. David was slipping away, and he had hours to act. He looked at Emily. You're coming with me to the police. We're ending this today. She nodded, no hesitation. They drove to the Chicago PD's downtown precinct, the notebook and flash drives in Kevin's bag. At the station, a detective named Ruiz listened as Kevin laid out the evidence. The recordings, the bank records, Emily's notes. Emily sat beside him, adding details about True Self's tactics, late-night breakthrough sessions designed to exhaust participants, group confessions that pressured people to cut ties with their families. Detective Ruiz raised an eyebrow. This is enough to open an investigation, but we need more to arrest Voss. If he's leaving tonight, we can't touch him without catching him in the act. Kevin's mind raced. What if we get him on record admitting to the scam? Ruiz leaned forward. Risky, but it could work. We need you wired, and we need him to talk. Emily spoke up. I can get him to talk. He trusts me, or at least he thinks he does. Kevin stared at her. You go back to him? After everything? Not for him, she said. For us. For the people he's hurt. By 7:30 p.m., Kevin and Emily stood outside the community center, a police van parked discreetly across the street. Emily wore a small wire taped to her chest, her hands steady despite the stakes. Detective Ruiz briefed them. Get him to admit to the money laundering or the manipulation. Don't push too hard, or he'll bolt. Kevin stayed back, his recorder running as backup, his heart pounding as Emily walked inside. Through the van's audio feed, Kevin listened as Emily approached David. I want back in, she said, her voice calm. I made a mistake leaving. David's tone was guarded. You brought your husband to my retreat, Emily. That's not loyalty. I know, she said, but I've got something you need, Kevin's evidence. He's got files, recordings. I can get them for you, but I want to cut. Kevin's stomach twisted. Was she playing her role, or was this real? David laughed, low and sharp. You think I need you to clean up your mess? The donations are already offshore. Chicago's done. I'm out by midnight. You can't keep doing this, Emily pressed. How many women have you conned? How much have you taken? Enough to live well, David said, his voice smug. They pay to feel alive. I'll just give them the story they want. The audio crackled as Ruiz signaled the team. That's enough. Move in. Officers swarmed the center, and Kevin followed, his pulse hammering. Inside, David was cuffed, his charm replaced by a scowl. Emily stood nearby, her face pale but resolute. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Kevin saw the woman he'd loved. Not the recruiter, not the victim, but Emily, fighting to make things right. As David was led away, Ruiz turned to Kevin. We've got enough to hold him. Your wife's testimony will seal it. Kevin nodded, but his focus was on Emily. She'd risked everything, but her role in True Self's scheme wasn't erased. The truth was out, but the cost was still unclear. The Chicago PD precinct buzzed with activity as Kevin sat across from Detective Ruiz, the hum of phones and footsteps filling the air. David Voss, alias True Self Collective's charismatic leader, was in custody, his smug demeanor cracked under the weight of the evidence. Bank records, Emily's testimony, and Kevin's audio from the retreat. The flash drives, Rachel's and Emily's, had exposed a web of fraud, with over $200,000 funneled to offshore accounts. But Kevin's focus wasn't on David's downfall. It was on Emily, sitting in an adjacent room, giving her statement. She'd helped take David down, but her role as a recruiter for True Self loomed like a shadow between them. Ruiz leaned back in his chair. Voss is looking at charges for fraud and money laundering. Your wife's cooperation gives us a strong case, but she's not off the hook. She admitted to recruiting. That's aiding and abetting. Kevin's chest tightened. He'd wanted justice, but the idea of Emily facing legal consequences felt like a fresh wound. What happens to her? He asked. Depends on the prosecutor, Ruiz said. Her testimony and a notebook help, but she'll likely face probation, maybe community service. We'll push for leniency. Kevin nodded, his mind racing. Emily had betrayed him, but she'd also risked everything to expose David. Was that redemption or just damage control? He stepped into the hallway where Emily waited, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She stood when she saw him, her eyes searching his. They're letting me go for now, she said quietly. I have to meet with a lawyer tomorrow. Kevin didn't respond immediately. The weight of her actions, leaving him, recruiting for David, lying for months, pressed against the relief of seeing her fight back. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she added. I just needed you to know I'm trying to make it right. Kevin exhaled, his voice steady but firm. You helped stop him, Emily. That matters. But you broke us long before David showed up. I need time. She nodded, her shoulders slumping, and walked away without another word. Kevin watched her go, the distance between them feeling final. The next week, news broke. True Self Collective was shut down, its Chicago operations dismantled. Local outlets ran stories about David Voss, exposing his history of manipulating vulnerable women under the guise of self-discovery. Rachel, the former admin who'd tipped Kevin off, reached out via email. Thank you, she wrote. I couldn't do this alone. You gave those women their lives back. Attached was a list of True Self's victims, some of whom had already contacted authorities to share their stories. Kevin felt a flicker of pride, but it was bittersweet. He'd stopped a predator, but his marriage was collateral damage. He threw himself into work, coaching his science club students through their final preparations for the citywide science fair. The lab, once his refuge, now felt like a place to rebuild. His students' enthusiasm, debating project designs, troubleshooting experiments, grounded him. One afternoon, a student, Mia, handed him a thank you note for his mentorship. You make us believe we can do anything, she wrote. Kevin tucked it into his desk, a reminder that he still had purpose, even without Emily. A month later, Emily sent him a letter, postmarked from a small town in Wisconsin. No return address, just a single page and a photo. The letter was brief. I'm in therapy, trying to understand who I am without True Self's lies. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I hope you're finding your way. The photo showed her on a hiking trail, standing alone, the wind in her hair. Behind her, a trail sign read, You are here. No smile, just a quiet resolve in her posture. Kevin stared at it, the ache in his chest softer now, not gone but manageable. He didn't write back. Instead, he drove to Lincoln Park, where he'd met Rachel by the South Pond. The water was calm, reflecting the city's skyline. He sat on the same bench, the photo in his hand. Emily wasn't asking for a second chance. and he wasn't ready to give one. But her letter felt like a step, not toward him, but toward herself. And for the first time, Kevin realized he was taking his own steps. He'd spent years being the steady husband, the quiet supporter, but now he was choosing himself. The science fair came the following week. Kevin's students won second place, their cheers echoing through the auditorium. As he handed out certificates, he caught himself smiling genuinely for the first time in months. The victory wasn't just theirs, it was his. He'd faced betrayal, uncovered a scam, and come out stronger. David was behind bars, Emily was rebuilding, and Kevin was no longer the man left behind. He kept Emily's photo on his desk, not as a tether to the past, but as a reminder. People could lose themselves, but they could also find their way back. Not to each other, maybe, but to something real. That night, Kevin walked home under Chicago's glowing lights, the weight of the last months lifting with each step. He didn't have all the answers, but he had enough. For now, that was freedom.